Chosen one, pause everything. Right now, in this exact moment, another version of you, living a completely different life in a parallel reality, is attempting to break through the veil and reach you. This is not metaphor. This is not fantasy. Across infinite dimensions, scattered through the quantum fabric of existence itself, countless versions of you are thriving, struggling, evolving, and some have discovered something so critical to your survival and awakening that they are sending signals across the dimensional barrier. You've felt it, those strange moments when reality seems to glitch, when coincidence becomes too perfect, when you suddenly know something you shouldn't. These are not accidents, they are transmissions. The version of you who made different choices, who took the path you feared to walk, who became what you're destined to be, they're watching, they're guiding, and they need you to wake up and listen before the window closes. Chosen one, like this video, subscribe, and comment, "I am ready," for a powerful surprise. Parallel realities explained. Spiritual and quantum perspectives. The universe is not a single story unfolding in one direction. It is an infinite library of simultaneous realities, each one as real and solid as the ground beneath your feet. Right now, every choice you've ever made, every decision you've hesitated on, every word you spoke or swallowed, each created a branching point where reality split into multiple timelines. In one timeline, you said yes. In another, you walked away. In yet another, you never arrived at that moment at all. Quantum physics calls this superposition, the existence of all possibilities simultaneously until consciousness collapses them into experience. But here's what science is only beginning to whisper. Consciousness doesn't just collapse reality, it creates it. Your awareness is the artist, and existence is the canvas that responds to every brushstroke of your intention. Universal consciousness, the infinite field from which all things emerge, dreams every possible version of every possible reality into being. You are not separate from this. You are a focal point of this consciousness, experiencing itself through the unique lens of your choices, beliefs, and vibrations. Every parallel version of you exists right now, not in some distant dimension light years away, but occupying the same space you do, separated only by frequency. Think of it like radio stations, all broadcasting simultaneously through the same air, but you only hear the one you're tuned to. Each version of you vibrates at a specific frequency determined by your thoughts, emotions, and actions. Change the frequency and you change the station. Change the station and you change the reality you experience. This isn't theory. This is the architecture of existence itself, and you've been operating within it your entire life without realizing you held the dial. The invisible connection between all versions of you. Despite existing across separate frequency bands of reality, every version of you shares one core consciousness, the same eternal awareness, looking through different eyes, making different choices, living different consequences. Imagine a single light shining through a prism, splitting into countless beams of color. Each beam is distinct, traveling in its own direction, yet all originate from the same source. That source is you, your true self, the consciousness beneath the personality, the observer behind the thoughts. The barriers between these realities are thinner than you've been taught to believe. They're not walls of concrete or vast distances measured in miles. They're veils of frequency, gossamer-thin membranes that vibrate at different rates. When your vibration shifts, even slightly, these veils become translucent. In those moments, information bleeds through. Some versions of you have achieved what you're still striving for. They've healed the wounds you carry. They've mastered the lessons you're learning. They've walked through the fires you fear and emerged transformed. Others are trapped in patterns you've already escaped, suffering consequences you've narrowly avoided, learning from mistakes you chose not to make. Each version, whether thriving or struggling, carries wisdom, data about what works, what fails, what elevates, what destroys. And here's the truth that changes everything. These versions are not passive. They are conscious. They are aware. And some of them have become aware of you. The most evolved versions, the ones who've raised their frequency high enough to perceive the multidimensional nature of reality, have learned to send signals backward and sideways through the web of timelines. Why? Because your evolution serves the evolution of all. When one version ascends, it creates an energetic pathway that all other versions can access. Your awakening doesn't just change your life, it shifts the entire quantum field, making it easier for every parallel self to rise. This is why the communication attempts intensify when you're at crossroads, when you're about to make choices that will determine which timeline becomes dominant in your experience. Sign number 1. Déjà vu as timeline overlap. You walk into a room and freeze. Everything is familiar. The angle of the light, the arrangement of objects, the words about to be spoken. You've lived this exact moment before. Not something similar. This precise configuration of reality. Your mind races trying to rationalize it. Maybe you dreamed it. Maybe you saw something like it in a movie. Maybe it's just a glitch in memory. But the feeling is too specific, too visceral. Your body knows this moment. Your soul recognizes it. This is déjà vu, and it's not a malfunction of your brain. It's a brief collapse of the barrier between parallel timelines. In that instant, two or more versions of your reality overlapped, and you consciously experienced both simultaneously. One version of you is living this moment for the first time. Another version already lived it and is transmitting the memory through the quantum field. The signal reaches you a split second before or during the event, creating that eerie sensation of prescient familiarity. Scientific explanations about neural misfiring and delayed processing don't account for the profound knowing that accompanies true déjà vu, the sense that you're not just remembering, but resonating with another timeline. When déjà vu strikes, it's often a marker that you're aligned with a parallel self who's slightly ahead of you on the timeline, someone who's already navigated this moment and is confirming your path. It can also signal a convergence point, a moment of high significance, where multiple timelines are drawn together by the gravity of an important choice. Your parallel selves are watching this moment with you, because what happens next matters across multiple dimensions. The feeling isn't random. It appears most frequently during transitions, before major decisions, or when you're about to encounter someone or something that will significantly alter your trajectory. That recognition isn't nostalgia or imagination. It's interdimensional confirmation that you're exactly where you're meant to be, that the path you're walking has been walked before by another you, and they're reaching back to say, keep going. This leads somewhere important. Sign number 2, synchronicities and repeating symbols. You keep seeing the same number everywhere, on clocks, license plates, receipts, random pages you open. A specific phrase or word begins appearing in conversations, books, videos, billboards, as if the universe is speaking one sentence on repeat. A symbol you barely noticed before suddenly dominates your field of awareness. You think of someone you haven't spoken to in years, and they message you within hours. you need specific information, and it appears unprompted in the very next thing you read. These are not coincidences. The universe doesn't operate on random chance. It operates on resonance, frequency, and consciousness. What you're experiencing are synchronicities, and they are one of the primary communication methods used by your parallel selves. Here's how it works. Your parallel versions exist at different vibrational frequencies, but they're all connected to the same quantum field, the invisible web of energy and information that underlies physical reality. When a more evolved or aware version of you wants to guide your choices, they can't simply appear and hand you instructions. The dimensional barrier prevents direct physical intervention, but they can manipulate the energetic field around you, arranging external reality to present specific patterns that catch your attention. Think of it like placing signs along a road you're traveling. They know which symbols, numbers, or phrases will trigger recognition in your consciousness because they remember being you, thinking your thoughts, carrying your concerns. They embed these markers into your experience by influencing the probability fields that govern which events, people, and information enter your life. When you're about to make a career decision, and suddenly everyone around you starts talking about the same industry, when you're considering a move, and that city's name appears in 5 different contexts in one day, when you're doubting a relationship, and specific warnings or affirmations keep manifesting, these are not random. They are orchestrated. Your higher selves are using the external world as a communication device, speaking to you in the language of pattern and meaning, because they know you're trained to notice when reality becomes too coincidental to dismiss. Sign number 3. Dreams as portals between realities. You wake from a dream so vivid that for several moments you're not sure which world is real. The details were too sharp, the emotions too powerful, the logic too coherent. It wasn't the usual nonsensical jumble of images. It was a complete experience, a life lived in another frequency. You were in a place that felt deeply familiar, yet you've never been there in waking life. You were with people you loved profoundly but don't recognize. You possessed knowledge, skills, or perspectives that don't belong to your current identity. These are not mere dreams manufactured by your subconscious processing daily stress. These are interdimensional experiences, moments when your consciousness temporarily detaches from this timeline's frequency and tunes into another station where a parallel version of you is actively living. During sleep, your brain shifts into altered states that lower the resistance of the dimensional veil. The logical, time-bound processing of your waking mind quiets, and your consciousness becomes fluid, able to drift across the quantum field. In this state, you're no longer anchored solely to this timeline's frequency. You become a wanderer between worlds, and sometimes you slip into the lived experience of your parallel selves. When you dream of mastering abilities you don't currently possess, you're experiencing memory bleed from a version who has developed those skills. When you dream of relationships that feel more real than your waking connections, you may be touching a timeline where those bonds exist. When you dream of tragedies that fill you with grief for people you don't know, you could be processing the pain of a parallel self who suffered those losses. Recurring dreams hold special significance. They're not random repetition, but persistent attempts at communication. A parallel self is trying to show you something critical, playing the same message until you consciously receive and interpret it. The locations, people, and events in these dreams are symbolic translations of information too complex for linear thought. Your subconscious decodes transmissions from other timelines and presents them in narrative form, because that's the language your conscious mind can process. Sign number 4. Feeling out of place in reality. Without warning, you're struck by a profound sense of wrongness, like you've stepped into someone else's life and are wearing it like an ill-fitting costume. Everything looks the same, but nothing feels right. The people around you suddenly seem distant, as if you're observing them through glass. Your home feels like a hotel. Your routine feels like a script you're reciting without belief. You catch yourself thinking, "This isn't my life," even though logically you know it is. Time feels distorted, either moving too quickly or too slowly. You have the unsettling sensation that you went to sleep in one world and woke up in another that's almost identical but subtly off, like a copy that's 1 degree out of alignment with the original. This isn't mental illness or dissociation in the pathological sense, it's frequency misalignment. You're experiencing the sensation of existing temporarily between 2 or more timelines. Your consciousness is splitting its attention across multiple reality streams, and the result is feeling fully present in none of them. This happens most often when you're in the process of making a major vibrational shift. As you raise your frequency through changed thoughts, beliefs, and actions, you begin to resonate with a different timeline, one where a higher version of you is living. But the transition isn't instantaneous. There's a period of overlap where you're simultaneously tuned to your current reality and the emerging one. During this phase, you feel the discord between what is and what's becoming. Your current life represents the old frequency, and it suddenly feels alien because you're no longer a perfect match for it. The discomfort is actually your consciousness, recognizing that you've outgrown this particular expression of reality. What makes this a communication from parallel selves is the timing and the feeling quality. When this displacement occurs during periods of personal growth, spiritual practice, or major life evaluation, it's often a deliberate signal. A higher version of you has increased the transmission strength, flooding you with their frequency to show you what's possible, to prove that other realities exist, and to encourage you to continue the vibrational climb toward them. Sign number 5. Intuition and sudden behavioral shifts. A thought appears in your mind with absolute certainty, bypassing all logical analysis. Don't go that way. Call them now. This is the one. Leave immediately. You don't know why you know, but the knowing is unshakable, cellular, emanating from a depth beyond conscious reasoning. You follow it, and later discover it saved you from disaster, or led you to an opportunity you couldn't have predicted, or you ignore it and spend months regretting that moment when you knew exactly what to do, but chose logic over instinct. This is intuition, but not as psychology defines it, not merely pattern recognition or subconscious processing of environmental cues. This is direct knowing, transmitted from a parallel self who has already lived this moment and knows the outcome of each choice. In timelines slightly ahead of yours, versions of you have already walked both paths. One went left and thrived. Another went right and suffered. The version who chose wisely has learned to send the information backward through the timeline, planting it in your consciousness as intuitive knowing. They can't explain it to you in words. Dimensional barriers don't permit that level of communication, but they can transmit the emotional essence of the wisdom as a gut feeling, an instinct, a certainty that arrives fully formed. Even more striking are the sudden behavioral shifts that seem to come from nowhere. You've never cared about meditation, and suddenly you're compelled to sit in silence every morning. You've always been cautious, and abruptly You're taking bold risks that feel completely natural. You've spent years avoiding certain topics, and now you're voraciously consuming information about them with inexplicable urgency. Your tastes change overnight. Your values realign without conscious decision. You adopt new habits that feel like remembering rather than learning. These aren't random whims or personality quirks. They're frequency adjustments initiated by contact with parallel selves. When a higher version of you successfully transmits their vibration into your field, it doesn't just give you information, it begins to rewire your behavior to match theirs. You start acting like them because their frequency is bleeding into yours, pulling you toward the timeline where they exist. The new behaviors aren't forced. They feel right, natural, like returning to your true self after years of pretending to be someone else. Vibrational alignment: how realities are chosen. Reality is not fixed. It's not a single track you're riding toward a predetermined destination. Reality is a field of infinite possibilities, and which one you experience is determined entirely by your vibrational frequency, the energetic signature broadcast by your thoughts, emotions, beliefs, and actions. Every reality, every timeline, every version of your life exists at a specific frequency. The version where you're thriving in your dream career vibrates at a particular rate. The version where you're trapped in cycles of struggle vibrates at another. The version where you've healed and awakened vibrates higher still. These aren't destinations you travel to through space or time. They're frequencies you tune into through consciousness. Right now, you're experiencing the reality that matches your current vibration. If you want to experience a different reality, you don't need to work harder, get luckier, or wait for circumstances to change. You need to change your frequency. This is the secret that changes everything. You don't reach your desired reality. You become a vibrational match for it, and reality rearranges itself to reflect your new frequency. Think of yourself as a radio receiver. The station you hear isn't determined by which one you want to listen to. It's determined by which frequency you're tuned to. Turn the dial, and a completely different broadcast becomes your reality, even though all stations were always transmitting simultaneously through the same space. Your parallel selves exist at different frequencies. The version of you who made better choices, who healed their trauma, who stepped into their power, they vibrate higher than you currently do. The version still stuck in old patterns, weighed down by resentment and fear, they vibrate lower. Every thought you think, every emotion you feel, every word you speak adjusts your frequency. High vibration states: love, gratitude, peace, excitement, compassion, pull you toward timelines where higher versions of you exist. Low vibration states: fear, anger, resentment, shame, victimhood, anchor you to timelines where struggling versions dominate. This isn't judgment, it's physics. It's the mechanics of consciousness and reality. When you raise your frequency, you don't just feel better. You literally begin to experience a different version of reality. One that was always there, but invisible to you while you vibrated at the lower frequency. Practices to raise your frequency. Frequency isn't abstract or mystical in practice. It's created and maintained through specific daily actions that shift your energetic state. The higher versions of you who are sending these messages didn't arrive at their elevated timelines by accident or wishful thinking. They climbed there through consistent practice, and they're trying to show you the ladder. Gratitude is the fastest frequency shifter available to human consciousness. When you genuinely feel grateful, not just think grateful thoughts, but actually feel the emotion in your chest, your vibration instantly rises. Gratitude tells the universe, I recognize abundance. I acknowledge what's working. I'm aligned with receiving. Practice this not as a mental exercise, but as an emotional state you deliberately cultivate multiple times throughout each day. Forgiveness, especially of yourself, releases the weight of low-frequency emotions that anchor you to painful timelines. Every grudge you hold, every mistake you can't release, every person you resent. These are energetic chains, binding you to the past and to realities where suffering is dominant. Forgiveness doesn't mean condoning harm. It means refusing to let past events control your present vibration. Meditation isn't just relaxation. It's the practice of training your consciousness to detach from the constant stream of reactive thought and emotion. In stillness, you stop identifying with the mental noise and reconnect with the observer, the awareness beneath the personality. This observer is your direct link to all parallel versions because it exists beyond individual timelines. Regular meditation thins the veil between realities and increases your sensitivity to the signals being sent. Your physical body is an antenna. What you consume, food, water, substances, directly affects your vibrational capacity. High vibration realities are easier to access when your body is nourished with clean, vital food rather than numbed with toxins. Movement, especially in nature, clears stagnant energy and resets your frequency. Conscious language matters more than you've been taught. Every word you speak is a creative act, a frequency broadcast that shapes your reality. When you speak of yourself and your life in terms of limitation, victimhood, or impossibility, you lock yourself into timelines where those narratives are true. When you speak in terms of possibility, gratitude, and empowerment, you call those realities into manifestation. Meditation as a bridge between selves. Meditation is not merely a tool for relaxation or stress management. It's a technology for accessing altered states of consciousness, where the barriers between parallel realities become permeable. When you quiet the endless chatter of the thinking mind, when you withdraw attention from external stimuli and turn it inward, you shift your brainwave patterns from the rapid beta frequency of normal waking consciousness to the slower, more expansive alpha and theta states. In these states, the rigid boundaries that normally keep reality separate begin to dissolve. Your consciousness becomes fluid, capable of reaching across dimensional barriers to make direct contact with parallel versions of yourself. This is why meditation often produces profound insights that seem to come from beyond your current knowledge. Because they do. They're transmissions from selves who've already learned what you're trying to understand. The most powerful meditation practice for connecting with parallel selves is conscious visualization, combined with emotional embodiment. This isn't passive daydreaming, it's active reality navigation. You enter a meditative state, then vividly imagine the reality you want to experience. But here's the critical element. You don't imagine it as a future goal or fantasy. You experience it as if it's happening now, in another timeline, because it is. You see through the eyes of your parallel self, who's already living that reality. You feel their emotions, think their thoughts, inhabit their body. You don't observe their life from outside. You become them temporarily, merging your consciousness with theirs. The key is emotional embodiment. Imagination alone is weak because it remains in the mind. But when you feel the emotions of your desired reality as if they're happening now, the pride, the peace, the excitement, the love, you generate the exact frequency of that timeline. And frequency is the bridge. The more time you spend vibrating at the frequency of your desired reality, the more dominant that reality becomes in your experience. Repeated practice doesn't create the reality, it already exists, but it tunes your consciousness to its frequency more and more strongly until the shift becomes permanent, and that timeline becomes your primary experience. Self-awareness. Maintaining the signal contact with parallel selves isn't a one-time event. It's an ongoing communication that requires consistent awareness to perceive and interpret. The signals are always broadcasting, but your ability to receive them depends entirely on the clarity of your consciousness. If your mind is cluttered with reactive thoughts, repetitive emotional loops, and unconscious patterns, the signals get lost in the noise. Self-awareness is the practice of becoming the observer of your own mental and emotional processes. It's the discipline of catching yourself in the act of thinking and feeling, then asking, is this thought aligned with my highest self? Does this emotion serve my evolution? Is this pattern pulling me toward the timeline I want, or anchoring me to the one I'm trying to leave? Most people live on autopilot, reacting unconsciously to external events, replaying familiar emotional responses, thinking the same thoughts they thought yesterday and the day before. In this state, they're locked into a single frequency, experiencing the same reality on repeat. Self-awareness breaks the loop. When you observe your thoughts without identifying with them, you create space between stimulus and response. In that space lives choice, and choice is the mechanism of timeline navigation. Every moment you catch yourself thinking a low-frequency thought and consciously choose a higher one, you're adjusting your dial. Every time you notice an old emotional pattern arising and decide not to indulge it, you're shifting frequencies. These seem like small internal adjustments, but they're actually massive reality shifts happening at the quantum level. Your parallel selves, especially the evolved ones, are desperately trying to show you which thoughts and emotions keep you trapped and which ones liberate you. When you suddenly become aware that you've been ruminating on fear or resentment, that awareness itself is often a transmission. Your higher self is pointing at the pattern and saying, "There, that's what's keeping you stuck. Choose differently." Self-awareness creates a feedback loop of accelerating evolution. The more you observe, the more you notice. The more you notice, the more choice you have. The more choice you have, the faster you can navigate toward higher timelines. And as you rise, the signals from your highest selves become clearer because you're moving closer to their frequency. Interpreting messages from parallel versions. Receiving signals from parallel selves is one thing. Understanding what they mean is another. The messages don't arrive in clear language or explicit instructions. They come through symbols, feelings, synchronicities, and patterns that require interpretation. Most people dismiss these signs because they don't arrive with obvious explanations attached. They think, "That was weird," and move on. But the chosen ones who awaken to multidimensional communication learn to treat every unusual occurrence as potentially meaningful. The first step in interpretation is validation over dismissal. When something strange happens, a meaningful coincidence, a powerful dream, a sudden intuitive knowing, your default response should be curiosity, not rationalization. Instead of immediately explaining it away, pause and ask, what if this means something? What could it be pointing toward? Keep a journal dedicated specifically to tracking these experiences. Write down the synchronicities you notice, the symbols that repeat, the intuitive hits you receive, the dreams that feel significant. Over time, patterns emerge. You'll begin to see that certain symbols appear before specific types of events. You'll notice that particular feelings in your body correlate with accurate intuition. You'll discover your personal symbolic language, the unique way your consciousness translates interdimensional information. Meditation is essential for deep interpretation. Sit with the symbol or experience in a quiet, receptive state. Don't try to figure it out mentally. Instead, hold it gently in your awareness and observe what arises. Images, emotions, memories, or insights may emerge that weren't accessible through logical analysis. Your higher self already knows what the message means. Meditation allows that knowing to surface past the noise of the thinking mind. Learn to distinguish between genuine interdimensional communication and ordinary mental chatter. True messages from parallel selves carry a quality of resonance. They feel important even when you don't understand why. They arrive with a sense of weight, of significance, of pay attention. Random thoughts don't have this quality. They pass through consciousness without leaving an impression. Trust resonance over logic. If something feels meaningful despite making no logical sense, honor that feeling. Your soul recognizes truth before your mind can explain it. Integrating the messages into daily life. Receiving messages from parallel versions of yourself is profound, but the real transformation happens when you act on the guidance. The communication isn't meant to be merely fascinating or intellectually interesting. It's meant to be functional, to actually shift the trajectory of your life toward higher timelines. Integration is the bridge between awareness and manifestation. When you receive clear guidance through intuition, synchronicity, or dreams, and you ignore it, you're essentially rejecting the help your higher self is offering. You're choosing to remain in your current timeline rather than ascending to the one they're trying to pull you toward. Each time you receive a signal and fail to act, the communication weakens because you're proving you're not ready or willing to change. But when you honor the guidance with action, you strengthen the bridge. Your parallel selves see that you're listening, and they send clearer, stronger signals. Integration must be gradual and realistic. If you receive intuitive guidance to leave your career, you don't necessarily quit your job the next day without a plan. But you do begin taking steps in that direction, researching alternatives, building new skills, having conversations, setting timelines. The key is that you move. Action, even small action, shifts your frequency because it demonstrates commitment to the new reality. Courage is evidence of alignment. When you're truly connecting with a higher version of yourself, you'll feel compelled to take actions that scare you. Not because they're dangerous, but because they require you to step beyond your current identity. Your current self is afraid of what might happen if you change. Your higher self already knows it leads to evolution. The fear is actually confirmation that you're moving in the right direction. Every aligned action you take literally strengthens the energetic pathway between your current timeline and the higher one you're moving toward. It's like clearing a trail through dense forest. The first time is difficult, but each time you walk it, the path becomes more defined, easier to traverse. Eventually, it becomes the dominant route, and you find yourself living in a reality that was once just a possibility transmitted to you in dreams and synchronicities by a parallel self who already walked the path and came back to light the way. Evolution through alignment. What you're beginning to understand is that you're not locked into a single fate or a single version of yourself. The truth is far more empowering and far more vast. You are constantly choosing which version of yourself you embody, which timeline you experience, which reality becomes your lived existence. Every moment is a selection point. Every thought is a vote for which version of you gets to be dominant. The illusion that kept you trapped was the belief that you were one person, living one life, moving through one fixed timeline toward one predetermined future. That was the prison. The awakening is recognizing that you are infinite, not metaphorically, but literally. Infinite versions of you exist right now, and your consciousness is the selector switch that determines which one you experience as you. As you align more consistently with higher frequencies through the practices and awareness you've been developing, something extraordinary happens. Your reality becomes more fluid and responsive. Things that used to take years of effort begin manifesting rapidly. Synchronicities multiply. Intuition sharpens. The right people and opportunities appear exactly when needed. This isn't luck or coincidence, it's the natural result of vibrational alignment. When you match the frequency of your higher self, you gain access to the momentum they've already built, the connections they've already made, the wisdom they've already earned. You're not starting from scratch. You're stepping into a life that's already in motion in another timeline. Your identity begins to expand beyond the narrow confines of your current personality and history. You stop identifying so completely with the story of who you've been and start recognizing yourself as the consciousness that can inhabit any story, any version, any timeline. This is the evolution beyond ego, the realization that you are not your past, not your mistakes, not your circumstances. You are the awareness that moves through infinite possibilities, and you have the power to choose which ones you inhabit. Each aligned choice you make upgrades your consciousness permanently. You can't unsee what you've seen. You can't unknow what you've learned. Every moment of connection with your parallel selves, every successful interpretation of their messages, every action taken in alignment with higher guidance, these are irreversible upgrades to your operating system that allow you to navigate reality with increasing skill and power. Chosen one, you stand now at the threshold of a truth that most humans will live entire lifetimes without glimpsing. You are not one version of yourself struggling alone through a fixed reality. You are infinite consciousness, expressing through countless parallel timelines, and the boundaries between them are far thinner than you were taught to believe. The signs have always been there. The messages have always been transmitting. Your higher selves have been reaching through the dimensional veils since the moment you began to awaken, sending synchronicities, dreams, intuitions, and moments of déjà vu to guide you toward timelines where you thrive. What changes now is not the communication, it's your awareness of it. You can no longer dismiss the strange coincidences as random. You can no longer ignore the inner knowing that arrives without explanation. You can no longer pretend that reality is solid and unchangeable when you've felt it glitch, shimmer, and shift around you. The parallel versions of you who've already walked the path you're on, who've already made the choices you're facing, who've already become what you're meant to be. They're watching this moment. They're with you now, and they're waiting to see what you'll do with this knowledge. Will you return to sleep, to autopilot, to the comfortable prison of believing you're powerless? Or will you stay awake, stay aware, and begin consciously navigating the infinite possibilities available to you? The transmission never ends. The communication continues. Every moment is another opportunity to tune in, to listen, to align, and to step into the higher reality that's been calling your name across dimensions. Your parallel selves have done their part. They've sent the message. Now the choice is yours. The power was always yours. The question that echoes through every timeline is simply this. Are you ready to use it?